Hey, what's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It is 9 o'clock Eastern Time here in Detroit, 8 o'clock somewhere, 7 o'clock somewhere else. Anyway, wanted to talk about this Supreme Court case. I was reading CNBC's article about this Manhattan Community Access Court versus Halleck. It is case number 17702. The Supreme Court decided to pick it up on Friday, and it's kind of, has to do with this crazy guy with his nipples showing. Well, I'll censor for you all. Do you guys like Alex Jones, InfoWars? Anyway, so yeah, the Supreme Court has agreed to hear a case that could determine whether users can challenge social media companies on free speech grounds, which means Alex Jones would be able to challenge to say that they legally censored him on all of the platforms that he was pretty much blocked on: Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, all the above. This case is Manhattan Community Access Corp versus Halleck, and it centers on whether a private operator of a public access television network is considered a state actor, which can be sued for First Amendment violations. The First Amendment, of course, gives everyone the freedom of speech. That ability could also shape companies like Facebook, Twitter, and Alphabet's Google to control the content on their platforms as lawmakers clamor for more regulation and activists on the left and the right spar over issues related to censorship and harassment. It's a pretty long article, but basically, in making the argument to the justices, the attorneys for this Manhattan whatever news network said that the court could use the case to resolve a lingering dispute over the power of social media companies to regulate the content on their platforms. So while the First Amendment is meant to protect citizens against government attempts to limit speech, there are certain situations in which private companies can be subject to the First Amendment liability. Attorneys for this Manhattan news network have made the case that social media companies are clearly not government actors, but in raising the question, they have provided the Supreme Court an opportunity to weigh in. So it'll be interesting because we do have a very conservative Supreme Court now, with Kavanaugh being in, and of course, most of the other justices are also conservative as well. I won't say most of them, but the majority now are pretty much conservative. But there are some precedents that have been set. You've had courts in California and New Jersey already weigh in on the issue, saying that social media companies don't constitute state actors and they are not subject to First Amendment liability. Basically, that says that a social media company should be able to censor the things that people post on their websites. It also says that a federal judge in New York ruled in May that the First Amendment protected users interacting with parts of Twitter, including the president's feed, basically saying that if I want to curse out the president and call him this, that, and the other, that I am free to do so, and that Twitter cannot censor whatever I have to say to President Trump. But that ruling, of course, did not apply to Twitter as a whole. So it's like it's been touch and go. The Supreme Court addressed a related issue back last year in June. In Packingham versus North Carolina, the court struck down a state law that prohibited sex offenders from accessing social media sites. Sex offenders. Basically, it said sex offenders could join social media sites. And this was back when Justice Anthony Kennedy, who retired, was still a justice, and it referred to social media sites as a modern public square. And to me, a modern public square is typically built by a government entity as a place for people to congregate and to have dialogue and discussion. So it's almost backwards. They are protecting these people because it's a modern public square, yet modern public squares are typically built by government entities. Usually you have to go to like a city hall to get a permit to speak and do things in the first place on a major basis. But for some reason, they're allowing these folks to go and do whatever they want. So I find that part pretty interesting. And then they have here that conservatives allege censorship. Chief Justice John Roberts, and I'm not even sure if I'm recording anymore, but it looks like we're still going. But yeah, basically it says Chief Justice John Roberts has shown a distinct preference for speech cases that concern conservative ideology. And that's pretty much the scary part to me, is that you could have the Supreme Court, who is conservative, siding with many conservative politicians and saying that social media sites like Twitter, like Facebook, like Google cannot basically censor. And this would be a huge win for Trump, who has already said that he wants to change things because he believes that Google is controlling what we can and cannot see. He actually put that in a tweet before. But to me, I'm like, okay, How did most of these companies start? You have Facebook started in Harvard by Mark Zuckerberg and a few people I can't remember. You had Twitter, same thing, small company. But these were all privately owned companies. They serve the public a good in that they help to spread information. They keep us all connected. But if they were to go away, we would be no less off than we were 10 or 20 years ago. Yes, we wouldn't get information as fast or as easily as before, but they are not a public utility. They are not a government entity. They don't work like a government does, and they don't provide anything that the government has otherwise provided. The government has never provided a platform with which we could speak. The government, sure, they've made public squares and things like that, but the government's job and role is not to increase communication amongst people and to keep friends in contact with friends and family members in contact with family members. That's what social media is for. And social media is a privatized company. If you go and take the ability for social media companies to regulate what is seen, if you go and force YouTube to show Alex Jones or Facebook to show some white supremacist or some Black Lives Matter thing and they can't take it down, then you pretty much hinder the ability for them to govern how their products are built, sold, operated, and you in effect can hinder their how much money they make. So there is some economics here to this as well, and I believe that the economics are going to win over the politics every day of the week, unless everyone sort of divests from social media companies, and we'll see that in the stocks if as this court case goes on. We'll see, hey, if the stock starts to go down, then you know the conservatives are probably going to win in this. Because again, if I work at Facebook, if I own Facebook, if I'm Mark Zuckerberg, I'm doing everything in my power to make sure that I'm maximizing profits for all of my shareholders, namely myself. If I have the government coming in and telling me, oh, you can't do this, you can't block this person, then that's hindering my product. I created this product. I should be able to run it the way I want. Granted, there are some things, because, we look at cars, you look at anything that you buy, there are consumer protections that come with some of these things. So we have a liability to people, to the environment, and things like that we have to always be conscious of. I work at a car company. We're conscious of the environment. We're conscious of people. We're conscious of safety. So we have rules around that, and there are government rules that regulate that. But social media is just such a different beast. Social media is in direct competition. It's in the direct eye of the First Amendment. You literally cannot have social media without the First Amendment. If there wasn't the First Amendment, then social media would never exist. You wouldn't have Facebook. You wouldn't have Facebook the way it was today. It would have never been allowed to be the global public square that it is today, where people can speak and say whatever they want. It's there because we have the First Amendment. If you somehow say that, Facebook cannot censor people, and Facebook, because believe me, it is censoring. Let's just get that out of the way. What Facebook does when they get rid of people like Alex Jones, or they get rid of caustic language and behaviors that they feel might cause danger to other people, it is censorship. It is censorship. And if this was a public, if this was the White House that was coming in and taking away your computer, that would make us like a communist state, or whatever you want to call it. So in a way, Facebook is censoring people, and it's okay for them to do that because they are a private company, and they should be allowed to ensure that the product that they created is being used to maximize their bottom line. And that's pretty much the bottom line in this whole case. There's no other way around it. It's the same for Facebook, for Twitter, for Google, Snapchat, Instagram, whatever. They created a product. They want to maximize the value of it so that more people buy in, more people are, let's take Netflix, for example. If all Netflix had was like some silly movies that no one cared about, no one would watch it. If they started censoring, anything that was rated R, no one would come to Netflix anymore because, they don't have rated R movies or anything like that. But because no one's censoring them, of course, they don't have, rated X movies or NC-17 movies, and I'm sure if they had that, they'd probably get even more people to join Netflix. But again, it's a privatized company. They sell shares on the stock market. That's the only part of them that is public. You cannot intervene as a government especially for something that involves the First Amendment. I'm sorry. Now, the government has the SEC, they have the FCC, they have, all these different things that they can use to try to, throw in some things, but unfortunately, you can't touch free speech. You can't touch free speech, and for these private companies, they have they have the power pretty much. They have the power over people individually to do what they want. And this goes for really any company. You can work at any company and they will all have their rules and regulations. If for some reason the company I work for realizes that I'm saying stuff that's contrary to their beliefs and they feel that I devalue their company, they have the right to let me go. That's really the bottom line. These private companies are in it to make sure that they can maximize their profits and satisfy their shareholders. And their shareholders are Republicans, they are Democrats, they're Libertarians, they're everything in between. And they have to make sure that those people are happy at the end of the day. And their customers. So if the majority of their customers don't like what they're seeing and it threatens a majority base of their customers, if Facebook feels that they have a majority that is liberal, and you have someone that's coming in conservative, just, completely just throwing caution to the wind and saying whatever, they're going to want to get rid of that person and make sure that they are satisfying their main base. Sure, they might say we are apolitical, we are, agnostic to the politics, but that's untrue. They are the party of whoever their majority is that's using their product, and they are the party of whomever their majority shareholders are, especially the major shareholders who are the ones that are putting in the votes for things like, what should they be censoring and whatnot. So I would love to hear other people's thoughts on this. I think it'll be really interesting to see what the Supreme Court says. Again, I'm wary because we do have a more conservative Supreme Court, but I also think that they won't take away the private companies' abilities to continue to censor things that they deem aren't right on their platforms. So yeah, let me know what you guys think, and I will see you all tomorrow. Peace out. Bye bye.